Hola, buenos días a todos. Me presento, soy Montserrat Reyes, gerente de Relaciones Públicas para Sony México. Es un placer encontrarnos en la Universidad del Claustro de Sor Juana para la conferencia de Scott Gray, CEO y fundador de Creo. En Sony tenemos el compromiso de seguir impulsando la creatividad. Es por eso la importancia y la vinculación con instituciones como ElClaustro. Quisiera presentar y agradecer a las autoridades que nos acompañan el día de hoy. Como parte de las autoridades del Claustro de Sor Juana, a la rectora maestra Carmen López Portillo, vicerrector de Enlace Institucional, doctor Rafael Tobar López Portillo, vicerrectora académica, licenciada Guillermina Torres Sabín, y director del Colegio de Comunicación, maestro Carlos Camacho Echegaray. Y también presentar a los ejecutivos que se encuentran el día de hoy de parte de Sony. Angelo Marconi, gerente regional de la categoría de Digital Imaging. Patricia Cuesta, gerente regional de Marketing Communication en Sony. Y Ricardo Valencia, gerente de Mercadotecnia para la categoría de Digital Imaging en Sony México. Agradecemos a la institución por abrirnos las puertas. Los dejo con unas palabras de Angelo Marconi.
Buenos días a todos. Bueno, muchas gracias por compartir este tiempo. Realmente ha sido espectacular la bienvenida que nos acaban de dar. Rafa, muchas gracias. Realmente es una oportunidad única. Y el día de hoy, esperando que ustedes puedan sacar máximo provecho de los tips que nos va a dar, de lo que nos va a compartir Scott Gray, quisiera compartirles tanto un poco de qué se tratan los concursos que tenemos y por qué Sony proactivamente busca estos espacios y contarles también de dónde vienen para que ustedes los aprovechen al máximo. Un segundo mientras ponemos la presentación. Bueno, básicamente, ok, ahora sí. Bueno, actualmente nosotros contamos con 2 concursos como Sony Electronics y me gustaría hacer énfasis en que son patrocinados por Sony, sin embargo no son concursos de Sony. Como posteriormente nos va a explicar Scott Gray, son unos concursos que actualmente cuentan con más de 16 años, específicamente el de Sony World Photography Awards, un concurso especialmente dedicado a fotografía y el único motivo que busca es poder apoyar a todos los talentos de Latinoamérica. ¿Por qué lo queremos hacer? Y me gusta siempre compartir un poco de la historia de cómo nacieron estos concursos. Hace 16 años, o de hecho hace un poco más de tiempo, cuando Sony todavía no estaba en el paisaje de cámaras fotográficas, adquirimos en su momento a Konica Minolta. En ese momento, un ejecutivo llamado Yoshiyuki Nogami-san, que inclusive fue el presidente de Sony Latinoamérica, se junta con Scott Gray y dicen, ¿qué podemos hacer nosotros para acercar a todos, a cualquier persona, a la fotografía? Y la fotografía entendiéndose como arte. Y vamos a ver que hoy nos vamos a enfocar mucho en el arte como tal y no tanto en la fotografía. La fotografía va a ser entendida como un medio que se usa en el arte. Y decidieron lanzar este concurso que tiene 2 características muy especiales y si de algo se van a quedar el día de hoy es eso. Número 1, que es un concurso 100% gratuito. De hecho, instamos a que nadie participe en concursos en los que tienen que pagar. Y 2, que pueden participar con cualquier equipo. Celular, Canon, Nikon, cualquier marca de fabricante de cámaras pueden participar en este concurso. ¿Y por qué? Porque realmente queremos que ustedes participen. Tenemos algunos motivadores, como digo yo. Obviamente tenemos premios en dinero para los finalistas, para los ganadores, para los… inclusive en este mismo tenemos un viaje muy interesante que posteriormente les vamos a compartir, a Londres, donde nosotros nos gusta decirles son los Oscars de la fotografía. Realmente es un evento único donde ustedes pueden experimentar todos los contactos. Y 2, y más importante, pueden generar contactos, conexiones. Son oportunidades únicas donde nosotros ponemos a disposición estos espacios para que todos los fotógrafos, todos los creadores de contenido, absolutamente todos puedan involucrarse y ganar conocimiento. Este concurso actualmente es el más grande del mundo, recibe más de 450,000 fotos en cada edición, participan más de 190 países y eso precisamente no es lo que lo hace lo más grande. De hecho, Scott, a través de todo este tiempo, ha generado un una maquinaria que permite tener una visibilidad de amplificación única. ¿Y por qué creemos que es válido? Porque realmente queremos escuchar, ver y sentir las historias que solamente nosotros podemos contar en Latinoamérica. Y cuando hago esta acotación, me voy a remitir a lo que pasó este año. El premio de sostenibilidad en este concurso, que ya voy a explicar a continuación cómo se llega a él, fue ganado por un fotógrafo italiano, contando la historia de cómo las basuras están impactando en Lima. Entonces, lo cual nos lleva a una reflexión y es, ¿por qué necesitamos fotógrafos de afuera que vengan a contar nuestras historias? Realmente una saturación de fotógrafos americanos, europeos, asiáticos, donde la comunidad artística, los coleccionistas de arte están diciendo, ya no queremos más de eso, queremos más de historias latinas, realmente están siendo apreciadas. Me disculpan porque en su momento sé que lo más pequeño, los del fondo seguramente no lo van a poder ver, pero les quiero hacer énfasis en cómo este concurso está dividido en 4 competencias. La primera de ellas es la juvenil, donde pueden participar de entre 12 y 19 años. Van a seguir un brief técnico que en este año se llama A través de sus ojos y que finaliza la convocatoria el 5 de enero. Posteriormente tenemos el formato estudiantil, donde pueden participar todos los estudiantes que pertenezcan a instituciones educativas que tengan un componente artístico relacionado con fotografía. Y acá se comienza a poner interesante el tema, porque vamos a crear un cuerpo de trabajo de entre 5 y 10 fotos. Este año el brief técnico es hogar, es decir, ustedes van a tratar de trasladar una historia única de para ustedes qué es hogar. ¿Listo? Esta convocatoria será el 30 de noviembre y los invitamos a todos que por favor revisen con sus profesores cómo participar, los ayuden en todo el proceso de edición, curaduría para poder participar. Este es muy interesante porque no solamente gana el estudiante en caso de que gane, sino que también gana la institución. De hecho, el premio para la institución ganadora es de $25,000 en equipos que siempre esperamos que sean puestos a disposición de los estudiantes. El último ejemplo que tuvimos hace 5 años aproximadamente fue en el caso de Argentina, una institución llamada Motivarte ganó este premio y bueno, pudieron actualizar todos sus equipos fotográficos para ponerlos a disposición de los alumnos. Luego tenemos la categoría abierta, que tiene 2 componentes muy interesantes. Número 1, que solamente deben enviar una foto, eso es lo más importante, principalmente teniendo en cuenta que el juvenil también lo tiene, pero pueden participar en todas estas temáticas, arquitectura, fotografía creativa, y acá hago un especial llamado porque todas las mujeres que participen en este concurso automáticamente quedan inscritas en el premio de Alpha Female Award. ¿Por qué hago énfasis ahí? Me voy a volver un segundo. ¿Ustedes conocen esta foto? Bueno, asumo que el silencio dice que no. Esta foto fue tomada por Dinora Graue. Ella es una fotógrafa mexicana que hace 2 años ganó el premio Alpha Female Award. Ella siguió participando y este año ella, fotógrafa mexicana, es la fotógrafa del año a nivel mundial. Entonces, el mensaje que quiero trasladarles es: estos premios realmente son puertas que les estamos abriendo a todos para que sigan explorando, para que sigan creciendo en conocimiento, y este es un claro ejemplo de cómo un premio inicial la catapultó a ella a seguir explorando, a querer un poco más, y este año pues para nosotros, o sea a nivel latinoamericano, es todo un orgullo decir que la fotógrafa del año es de acá, de Latinoamérica, acá de México. Entonces es algo muy lindo para nosotros. Y ustedes dirán, bueno, ¿cómo hago para ganar? ¿No? De pronto puede ser muy retador o podemos pensar que eso es casi imposible, participar y ganarle a 450,000 fotos. Nosotros localmente, Sony Latinoamérica, diseñamos un programa que son los premios nacionales, donde actualmente todos los que participen en esta categoría global automáticamente quedan inscritos y nosotros posteriormente filtramos todos los ganadores latinos y vamos a escoger al primero, segundo y tercer puesto. Y de nuevo, esta foto de Pavel Vélez, mexicano, fue el número 1 este año. Entonces el mensaje es, hay mucho talento, queremos seguir descubriéndolo, queremos que ustedes se sigan involucrando para poder seguir contando estas historias. Y finalizo rápidamente con la categoría profesional, donde al igual que en la competencia estudiantil, tenemos que crear este cuerpo de trabajo, tenemos otras tantas temáticas que puntualmente aquí quiero hablar de la del medio ambiente. Como ustedes pueden saber, es una temática o una coyuntura bastante importante actualmente. Y lo mismo, el premio que les comentaba anteriormente de este fotógrafo italiano sale de esta categoría. Automáticamente todos los que participen en el medio ambiente en competencia profesional quedan inscritos para participar en esta competencia. Y bueno, acá el más reciente, este es el reciente bebé de Sony. De acá me gustaría saber quiénes o cuántos, no alcanzo a verlos realmente, pero cuántos se dedican, por ejemplo, a crear video. Bueno, por ahí sí alcancé a ver unas manos levantadas. Bueno, buenísimo. Si la fotografía no es lo de ustedes, nosotros recientemente, el año pasado para ser exactos, lanzamos un nuevo concurso que son los Sony Future Filmmaker Awards. Es un concurso que, así como anteriormente yo les hablaba de la visibilidad que les podemos dar, en esto quiero que se queden con una cosa. Un taller de 4 días en Sony Pictures, en Los Ángeles, en los estudios de Sony, en Culver City. ¿Y por qué quiero que se queden con esto? Aparte de que también tenemos premios fantásticos, dinero que los puede apoyar, porque ni ustedes teniendo todo el dinero del mundo podrían entrar a los estudios de Sony Pictures. Es imposible. De hecho, la ceremonia la vamos a tener en mayo. Yo voy a acompañar a algunos de los ganadores y yo no puedo entrar. Esto es solamente para los ganadores y finalistas de la competencia. Y realmente es una oportunidad única porque si ustedes quieren aprender, seguramente querrán aprender de los mejores. Y estamos convencidos de que esta experiencia es una oportunidad única para que adquieran conocimiento de primera mano de Sony Pictures. Scott nos va a compartir, inclusive están los directivos de 3-Star Pictures, o sea, realmente la gente que está activamente buscando nuevos talentos. Esta competencia, este concurso, está dividido en 6 categorías, en ficción, no ficción, medio ambiente, estudiantil, animación y formato futuro. Reconocemos activamente que el celular es la puerta de entrada para todos los creadores de contenido, ya sea contenido audiovisual o contenido de video o fotografía. Y de hecho, en el anterior concurso también pueden participar con celulares. En esta ocasión tenemos este premio de formato futuro, donde participan con un cortometraje de entre 2 y 5 minutos, y cuando ustedes lo vayan a enviar, muy importante para todas las competencias, que esté con subtítulos en inglés. Es muy importante, obviamente, para darle a los jurados un poco de contexto de qué va lo que estamos contando. Categoría de animación, al igual que las anteriores, única salvedad que el 75% sea animación, y algunas pautas muy sencillas. Pueden participar en diferentes categorías, obviamente deben seleccionar que corresponda a la categoría. Y ayer Scott nos compartió una cosa: cuando ustedes entran en la estudiantil van a ser juzgados como estudiantes, ¿vale? Entonces ustedes deciden en cuál categoría quieren participar, pero de pronto en otras categorías tipo animación es probable que sean juzgados con un criterio, digamos, más fuerte, más objetivo, por así decirlo. Lo que les decía, todos los finalistas viajan, lo cual hace que son 30 personas que están teniendo esta experiencia. Y acá también me gustaría compartir otra connotación. El ganador del premio estudiantil del año pasado fue acá de Latinoamérica, fue de la Universidad de Medellín en Colombia, y el ganador de la categoría de no ficción fue un brasilero. Entonces realmente, de nuevo, para nosotros ha sido este año como un impulso para decir: hay talento, hay mucho talento latinoamericano, queremos seguir buscándolo, y activamente el jurado lo está buscando. Realmente estamos buscando esas habilidades únicas y potencial que todos ustedes tienen. Y para finalizar, cierra el 15 de febrero, y a continuación les voy a compartir un pequeño video para que ustedes vean qué es la experiencia del concurso de fotografía. Y posteriormente le vamos a dar paso a Scott para que nos comente cómo podemos elevar y aprovechar todas las tendencias actuales para que maximicen esas oportunidades. Y como decimos nosotros, sabemos que hay muchos fotógrafos actualmente compitiendo por ese proyecto, por ese contrato, con ese acercamiento con una galería de arte, pero él nos va a dar unos tips muy específicos para que podamos elevar el nivel. ¿Podrías poner, por favor? Acá de Dinora Graue recibiendo su premio. Realmente una noche única donde llevamos a los finalistas y participan directamente.
En junio del año pasado, en el sur de Texas, estaba yo fotografiando, de hecho, cara a caras. Son aves de rapiña, caracaras, en vuelo. Y de pronto vi a este par de individuos que estaban más o menos como a 20 metros de distancia, en una posición que me encantó porque miraban precisamente al mismo lado y es como si estuvieran posando para mí.
Este trabajo es una comisión a cargo de la ONG WaterAid y de The British Journal. Nosotros aplicamos una convocatoria porque ellos estaban buscando compartir historias sobre los lugares donde trabaja WaterAid, que ayuda a la gente que tiene problemas para conseguir agua potable. Y a nosotros nos interesaba mucho contar historias desde nuestro continente.
Esta serie se llama Guardianes de los Glaciares, que cuenta la historia de una comunidad en los Andes peruanos que está sufriendo de manera directa los estragos del cambio climático. El cambio climático afecta a todo el mundo, pero no es muy conocido cómo afecta a las comunidades indígenas que viven.
Bien, Coyuriti es una festividad que mezcla lo religioso con el mundo andino. Es una resistencia cultural que se manifiesta en los Andes de la ciudad de Cusco. Esta festividad implica una mezcla de ritos, de conexión con la naturaleza y también el derroche de fe.
Mi proyecto sobre las visitas empieza en el 2017 con mi proyecto de tesis. Sí, estoy hablando sobre las visitas a las cárceles, porque siempre se habla de los presos, pero en este caso quise darles el crédito a las que acompañan, porque yo siento que el que acompaña también sufre.
Mi obra está inspirada en ver las cosas de otra manera, ver los lugares de otra forma. Tiene como nombre resignificar, que es darle un nuevo sentido o ver las cosas de otra manera. En este caso, en específico, es de la ciudad de Medellín con su nuevo nombramiento, que es Distrito Especial Tecnológico de Ciencia y Tecnología, lo que le da a la comunidad pues una manera de verse a sí misma, una forma de presentar su subjetividad y de incluirse pues en estos nuevos cambios y dejar un poco atrás esa visión que hay de Medellín.
¿Me ayudas, por favor, poniendo un segundo la presentación, la anterior, ¿dónde estaba? ¿Me dejas acá, por favor? Dale, gracias. Bueno, y todos se preguntarán, ok, ¿cuál va a ser el siguiente paso? ¿Cómo puedo participar? Los dejo rápidamente con los diferentes puntos de contacto nuestro. Especialmente les recomiendo que ingresen a alphauniverse-latin.com. Ahí van a encontrar toda la información de los concursos. Adicionalmente tienen a disposición unos leaflets donde van a tener los QR. En este portal también tienen más de 150 videos relacionados con fotografía, talleres totalmente gratuitos y obviamente nuestras diferentes redes para que puedan conocer un poco más. Y sin más, ahora sí aprovecho y le doy paso a Scott Gray, que nos va a compartir pues todos estos cambios en tendencias y qué es lo que se requiere para poder diferenciarse en medio de tantos grandes talentos que tenemos acá en Latinoamérica. Entonces, sin más, Scott Gray, presidente de la Organización Mundial de Fotografía.
Hola. Hola, bien? That's the end of my Spanish. Sorry. Is everyone okay if I speak in English? Everyone can understand? Yes? Excellent. My English is excellent. So hopefully we'll be able to get through this in a very comfortable way. So I work for a company called Creo. So we've been around about 20 years. And our ambition is to celebrate art and creativity, and ultimately to create spaces for artists to thrive. So we actively want to find amazing talent and amazing artists, which we know are here in this room and we know are out there. So what we want to do is try to sort of find you, inspire you, and hopefully encourage you to engage with us, because the art world is amazing. Art is the fabric of society, and I think it's incredible. And I can't think of a more fitting space to do it than here. So thank you for letting us be here. But what an incredible room, an incredible university, an incredible campus to be able to talk to you about art and creativity, which I think is already in you. So my first caveat is I'm hoping there are artists and photographers in the room. Just to be clear, I am not a photographer. I wish I could be an artist, but unfortunately I'm not. I collect art, and that's how I got into doing this. But I love art, and I obviously engage with a lot of art, and I engage with a lot of artists around the world. We have our awards programs that Angelo has just talked about, but we also organize art fairs all over the world. In fact, we're the largest art fair organizer in the world, with art fairs all over Asia, Europe, and we've just opened one in New York. So whilst I don't take pictures or I don't paint, I definitely value and appreciate art. So I'm going to mainly talk about photography in terms of art, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about, I think, works in all creative spaces, whether you want to be a poet, a writer, a painter, a photographer. So, but I'm going to really focus sort of on photography as a whole. So photography, obviously, there's three sort of main types of photography. You've got fine art photography, commercial photography, and documentary photography. I'm going to only focus on sort of art and fine art photography. Nothing wrong, obviously, with commercial photography, and nothing wrong with documentary photography if that's what you want to do. But I'm just going to focus on the sort of art style of photography. If you are thinking about photography and you are thinking about sort of that art space, I think it's the most exciting medium at the moment. I think your generation definitely, you engage with photography, people read photography every day, and it's a really accessible sort of medium. If you think about visually a photograph, so you know it's so much easier to understand. You don't need cubism or an understanding about surrealism in terms of other art forms. So the accessibility of photography and where photography is really exciting in terms of where we are now. And from a collecting point of view, you know, the Mapplethorpe sold for $56,000 and the Koenig piece sold for $300 million. So, I mean, there's a huge difference. I'm not saying loads of people have $56,000, but more people have $56,000 than $300 million, right? So the point is photography is super exciting, but it's accessible mentally, but also sort of financially. So as a medium in terms of for the future and where we're going in terms of art, I think photography has a huge, huge impact to make. And now is that time that we're seeing it. We're seeing more photography in all of our art fairs. We're seeing more artists engage with photography. So we deal with a lot of artists like Alex Marie here, who they're artists. They exclusively use photography, but they wouldn't class themselves as a photographer. They're an artist first and foremost, but actually the medium they choose is photography. Now, actually, Alex Marie is one of my favorite artists. She's super young. She's probably older than all of you, but just anyone younger than me is super young. So she's in like sort of her late 20s, early 30s, French artist, amazing. Her mind, what she does is absolutely incredible. And what she does is mainly these incredible installations using photography and video and new technology and really sort of making these incredible spaces. I went to an exhibition of hers a few years ago, and it was all about skin. So she photographed skin, and she printed it on these huge canvases and then hung them down in the museum and in the gallery space. It was like an abattoir, like a butcher shop. I mean, incredible vision, incredible talent. But that's the point about photography. It's not about a black and white photograph in a frame. It's actually a tool to create art. And the versatility that it has is truly, truly incredible. But it's also accessible to artists. And I just want to sort of talk about Gabriella's piece here, which I absolutely love. I mean, she's a tremendous, tremendous artist. And I just want to talk a little bit about this work, and I'll give you the context as to why. So I hope you like it. I love it. I think it looks like a piece of sculpture, right? It's absolutely beautiful. I'm biased because I acquired it a few weeks ago, so I'm definitely biased towards it. But I loved it when I first saw it. But what's incredible about it, so bear with me, I'll just sort of talk about the image. That Gabriella, the artist, she came across a catalogue, a book, which was about the artifacts that had been discovered during an archaeological dig in the Palestine, Israel, Gaza area of the world. So she had sort of got this catalogue and it had documented all the artifacts. And so she ripped out the pages of this catalogue and then she cut out all the artifacts from the pages. So obviously each page obviously had a hole sort of within it. And then she layered the pages on top of each other and then she photographed the hole that was left and then blew up the photograph, which is what you see here. So the idea is that the hole represents the archaeological dig that was, dug to find the artifacts, but actually the lines that are created reflect the lines of the borders and the political crisis within Palestine and Israel. I mean, conceptually, absolutely amazing, right? I mean, absolutely amazing. Concept, perfect. Delivery, execution, immaculate, right? But totally accessible. I mean, she probably had to buy a pair of scissors. So it's not like Alex Marie's installation on the previous page. The point is art and creativity is in your hands, right? It's in your hands and in your mind. You don't need $1 million to do some massive installation. You can just have your idea, your concept, a pair of scissors, a camera, or whatever it is that you do, and create some amazing, amazing work, and create things that are utterly beautiful. Whether you needed to know the story or not doesn't matter, right? It's just a beautiful piece of art in itself. But actually, I think one of the lovely things about photography particularly is when you start peeling back the layers of an image, it can be really inspiring. And actually, that's the beauty of I think, where photography is. So, that's great. Photography's great. Photography's awesome. There's huge opportunity going forward. But there is a challenge, right? So, I think photography has a challenge, and I think artists using photography have a challenge, so photographers. I think photography has a challenge because it's this one word, photography, right? And it covers so many things. On one side, you've got the awful selfie, which we should never do, just to be clear. Never do selfies. So on one side, photography says selfie, and on the other side, you've got incredible fine art. But this one word covers this whole area. So as an organization, we work all over the world. I mean, we do exhibitions literally all over the world to raise the profile and appreciation of photography as art, with a view to help artists using photography value their work at a higher price point. But it's one of the challenges that photography has. But also, when it comes to photographers themselves, and I'm sure you have many friends who are going to be like this, where they say, well, everyone has a camera, right? Everyone has a phone, so everyone's an artist, or everyone's a photographer. I totally disagree with that. I mean, I have a pen, but I'm not a novelist, So it's this thing where photography is an amazing skill, but because this concept that everyone does it means it's easy, or there's loads of people out there doing it. So I think that's a challenge for artists. But I think that's the same if you want to be a writer, a poet, a singer, a photographer, a painter. The competition is huge, and no more so than in art and photography. So the question is, how do you raise your profile? How do you become famous? How do you basically go beyond these shores? Because the art world is a global industry. It's not a Mexican industry. It's not a Mexico City industry. It's a global industry. So it's a case of how do you find yourself becoming famous? And actually, for me, it's about awards and programs that can help you do that. Oh, sorry. Help you do that. I think Angelo said, obviously I don't speak Spanish, but I'm assuming Angelo said it's free. So everything that we're talking about is free. So we're not selling you anything. But I'm obviously biased towards the World Photography Awards because it's our program, but it is by far the biggest in the world, without question. But it's the biggest in terms of the exposure we provide the artists. We've got so many stories where we've found artists who are, engaging with art in the very early stages. In fact, there's a wonderful artist called Tanya Franco-Klein, who's Mexican, and we met her and she was in her early 20s. And actually, we awarded her a program, and we gave her portfolio reviews and helped her with her work, did some exhibitions here in Mexico, and elevated her up. She was picked up by a gallery here called Almanac, which is an amazing gallery in Mexico, and that gallery actually shows in some of our art fairs. And now she sells her work for upwards of $5,000. And so she's gone from an up-and-coming or unheard of artist to being exhibited around the world through the Sony Wealth Talk Awards. So it's really real, and the opportunity is absolutely there, and it's absolutely free for you. So whether you're into film or art or photography, it's something to engage with, because these platforms genuinely give you that opportunity to be seen internationally, and it's free. We actually promote any free award. We're the biggest, so we feel that's okay to do. We wouldn't promote anything that you pay for, and I would encourage you as up-and-coming sort of artists to do the same. If engage with free programs, you don't need to pay. Save your money and engage with programs that you don't have to pay for, which invariably are better programs. So, in short, photography is great. Let's make you famous. Let's celebrate your work. Let's put you out there and hopefully take you to the next level. And there's three things I would like to talk about mainly, which I think, obviously I'm going to keep photography in mind here, but I think is relevant to most sort of art contexts. So three things as up-and-coming artists you should think about in terms of your work and what you're doing to take you to the next level. So perspective, detail, and edit. So that's the three things I sort of to think about in terms of your work. So firstly, perspective. When I want to talk about perspective, it's about how you approach your subject and how you approach what you're shooting. Does anyone know this, or has anyone seen this before? No? Okay, before. I mean, it's quite stark. It's not a, but it's an interesting image. I mean, actually, when I first saw it, the only thing that struck me was it was sort of 2 pots of ice cream, 1 spoon. I thought was odd, but I mean, it composed well, visually fine. But it's actually the body of work that I find interesting. So remember, I want to talk about how you approach a subject. So this is the body of work that it's sort of come from, and it's by an amazing female artist called Helen Thompson. She's British, also young actually, in her 20s, and I find this hugely compelling. And the reason I find it compelling is it's a series on the last meal of death row prisoners, basically. And that's quite a powerful thing, right? So this is Timothy McVeigh, the shoe bomber. So his request was mint chocolate chip ice cream, hence only having 1 spoon. One prisoner wanted a black coffee to stay awake during the execution. The other one declined a meal, and another one asked for an olive with the pip on the inside with the hope to choke before his execution. So, I mean, personally, I think that's super powerful, right? I mean, if you think, if I came into your art class and said, and commissioned you to do a series on death row, how many people would think like this? Most people would go and photograph the bars, the prison bars, or go and photograph the prisoner, or the electric chair, or that kind of sort of obvious, brutal way of doing it. Not many people would do it in this way. And I would argue that actually this is far, far more powerful. And I would say you'll remember this for a long time, and actually you'll remember it more than if I just showed you sort of shock and horror. I think within art, within anything, within storytelling, within writing, shocking is easy. We can photograph a dead person. Shocking is easy. But actually to convey a story with beauty, with elegance, with sophistication, with refinement, and even a really difficult story takes absolute skill. So it's just trying to think about, when you're thinking about your stories and thinking about what you want to do and what you want to create, try to think about a different perspective and a different way of producing that. Just to keep it on that perspective, just very briefly, there's another incredible lady called Leah. She's American, she lives in Hawaii. So we're seeing a lot of work at the moment on the environment and climate change, and the impact, obviously, humanity is having on this earth. And I just think Leia's done it in a really, really stunning way. Most of the work that we see is in colour. It's really focused in on the sort of the machinery or the landscape that's being destructed. And it's quite gruesome, it's quite banal as well, and not very impactful. And I think what Leia's done is literally the opposite of that. And yet again, I think it's far more impactful. So she lives in Hawaii, and she wanted to document the impact that we as humans are having on the natural sort of world around her. So she's photographed the landscapes in black and white, and then what she's done is she's cut out, laser cut, the image itself, everything that was man-made within that picture. So she's scarred the picture like we've scarred the earth, and then how she's processed that with that sort of bronze, silver scarring of what was remained. And I think it's really, I have one, but I think it's super elegant and really powerful. And actually, yet again, it's what I was saying earlier about photography. You know, you can tell these really strong, powerful stories if you just think differently about the subject and just a little bit more thought. But why is it important in terms of perspective? No matter what you're doing in the creative arts, it's important in order to stand out. Because whether you come to a collector, a publisher, a gallerist, or wherever you want to show your portfolio and wherever you want to take your work, you know, it's a case of trying to be above everyone else, right? To show that you are thinking in a different way. And I think what a lot of young artists, what they forget is that people buying into you aren't buying into you for the work you're doing now, they're buying into what you've got potential for the future as well. So that's film, photography, art, painting, novels, that whole creative art space. You know, so as a collector, you're buying what you're seeing in front of you, but also you're buying the future. So showing that depth of thought, showing that different perspective is a really important thing to help you elevate yourself and elevate your career going forward. So the second thing, so perspective, detail, and edit. So the second thing is just about detail. And this is about the depth that you should be going in terms of your project. So you've had your idea about the project you want to photograph or document or film, and then it's about the sort of depth and the detail that you should be going into. Does anyone know, have you seen this before, anyone? No? So this is an artist called Taryn Simon. Now she is an super well-known, famous artist. She really just focuses on sort of photography, but she's incredible, actually. And she did this series, Birds of the West Indies. And actually, the series is all about James Bond. I'm assuming everyone knows James Bond. Everyone knows James Bond? Excellent, perfect. So what she did is she wanted to document James Bond. So she did the James Bond models, the actresses, the cars, the objects. So she created this sort of body of work about James Bond. And I think there's about 97 photographs within this series. So I just want to talk about the detail that she went to create this project. And there's 4 things I just want to reference. So there's only 3 editions, because photography is sold in editions, if you know. And there's only 3 copies of this work. And we were lucky enough to show one of them in our art fair in Shanghai. And when you show it, you have to show it in one line, so it looks like a film strip. So how it's curated and how it's printed. So Taryn Simon, in terms of doing the work, she's already thinking about how she wants her work to be shown. So it's not just good enough to go, I want to do a series on James Bond. She's thinking, I want to do a series on James Bond, and I want it to be seen like this, printed like this, curated like this, hung like this. So she's already going on to the next level before even completing it. And it's such an important thing to try and remember. And on the right, she went to Ursula Andress, who's one of the actresses who plays one of the James Bond girls. And the Ursula Andress declined. She was like, I don't want to be photographed. So Taryn Simon actually just left it blank. So she kept the image within the exhibition, and it's within the book, but it's actually just a blank frame. Another thing that she researched and got the detail for, 4 of the James Bond films, the James Bond ladies that were in the film are actually voice-overed. So the 4 different actresses have a voice-over of their voice. throughout the whole film. And it's the same voiceover actress did all 4 Bond films. I think she's a Danish lady. So Taryn Simon did all that research, and then she went to this voiceover artist and actually recorded her and filmed her just reading the James Bond script. So within the exhibition, within the installation, we also have the audio visual of this voiceover artist. So yet again, it's that detail, right? So she's thought about the project, she's researched it, she's going that extra layer, extra layer, extra layer. And then the final point on it is the title itself, Birds of the West Indies. So it's called Birds of the West Indies because Ian Fleming, who is the author of James Bond, he lived in Trinidad, and he's an ornithologist. He loves bird watching. So he'd sit there in his study in Trinidad, writing his books, looking out the window and looking at the birds. And he was trying to think of the name of his spy. And he wanted a really boring name that would, just like be vanilla, that he could call his spy. And he couldn't think of a name. But he had a dictionary on his desk, which was a dictionary of all the birds of the West Indies. And the author of the dictionary is James Bond. So he used that name as his now very famous spy. So, but it's that detail part, right? Back to what I was saying earlier about perspective and why it's important. It's showing that you can go that extra layer. It's showing if you've got an idea, whether you want to photograph what's happening in your local area, or you want to write about something, or you want to paint something, if you want to document whatever it is, it's going that extra layer in terms of the perspective, the storytelling, but the depth of storytelling and the detail you want to go. A lot of young artists I meet, they try and tell one massive story in a short space. It might be a case of focusing in on one element of that story so you can go to more detail. It's just trying to find the right thing for you, but it is about that depth. But it's also important, therefore, to have passion for the story you want to tell, because only if you're passionate about it will you be able to go that extra layer. Will you be able to go that extra mile of depth in terms of detail and thought and processing, but also how you want to take it forward. Someone actually, it was a lady called Irena Werning, she's an Argentinian artist. She said to me, doing an art project is like a marriage. You have good times. I mean, you're all super young, none of you are married, so you probably won't know this. But it's like a relationship, right? You have good times and you have bad times. And you only get through the relationship and you get through the relationship because you love your partner. And actually, that's the thing about a project, right? You need to love your project, you need to love the theme of what you're doing, and that enables you to go that extra mile in terms of thinking. And the final thing, and this is really probably for the more for the photographers and filmmakers in the room, is the edit. And the edit is as important as the work itself. And I can't stress that enough. The edit in terms of your photography is crucial, actually, in terms of what you're trying to do. And I want to show this example by Federico Borello. He did this series called 5 Degrees, and it's about climate change and the impacts of climate change to farmers in India. And ultimately, because of the climate change, the droughts, the suicide rate of farmers is through the roof, unfortunately. And it's obviously a very bad situation. So he was documenting that. And so you've got a picture of a widow, for example, a picture of one of the farmers who killed himself in terms of the framing. You've got the drought. You've got the children playing in the water, but you can see where the water has receded from. You've got these two wonderful still lifes, the hoe and the skull, both actually independently beautiful images themselves, and then obviously a farmer and then another farmer going through his decimated field. So in terms of the story, it's got everything, right? It's got absolutely everything. The suicide, the death, the impact on the landscape. I mean, it has the whole story within 10 images, beautifully framed, consistent in palette, in color, in tone, in texture. I mean, it's an incredibly well-edited series. And it really sits well together. If he had, for example, sent, and actually Federico won Senior Photography Awards a few years ago with this series. If he would have submitted that in, but let's just say 2 of the images weren't very good, the whole thing would be basically discarded. So if I was sent a body of work by an artist and it had 20 great pictures and 4 bad ones, the whole portfolio would go. If you go to a publisher, a collector, a gallery, a museum, and you want to show your work in an exhibition or anything you want to do, the edit of your work is so, so essential. And there is no room for error in that. So I appreciate people have like favorites. It's like having your favorite child. I have 2. I definitely have a favorite, but we shouldn't talk about that. And if your parents say there isn't a favorite, there is a favorite, just to be clear. But it's like sort of, I appreciate it's hard to edit. I really, really, really appreciate it's hard to edit. But it's so important to do because you can oversaturate it. It's like if you're doing a photo project, think of it like a book, and you've got a chapter. You know, you've got chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And you're thinking the story you want to tell, or it's like a meal. I've got a starter, a main course, a pudding. So I need to make sure I've got a photo for each, you know, and then you tell that story, and editing that together to make it consistent is really, really important. Without it, all the wonderful work you've done in creating your film or creating your photography is wasted. The edit is absolutely as important as the work itself. And that's pretty much it. So ultimately, in short, keep going with your photography and your filmmaking, and think about those things in terms of perspective, think about edit, think about the detail, and hopefully we can sort of take it on. In terms of next steps, we want to see your work. I know, without question, there is incredible talent. We have so many artists on our books from Europe. We have so many artists on our books from America, and it's why we're here. I've had 2 days in Medellin, and I've got 2 days in Mexico. Last year we went to Peru and Chile. You know, we know there's incredible talent. I mean, obviously there's incredible talent in Latin America, and we want to see that, and we want to take it to the world, and the world wants to see that as well. But in order to do that, in order to help you do that, you have to engage. And there's so many stories. Sarah Schrimpf, who's this incredible German child, I mean, she's like 25 or something. She was shortlisted with us in our student award, and she's a German artist. And her work is absolutely amazing, so powerful, so impactful. And so we did a lot of work with her in Germany, and we put an exhibition on. We worked with Sony Germany to do that. All of this obviously is absolutely free for the artist. And then because of that, she got picked up, and she was represented in the German pavilion at the Venice Biennale. And that's all thanks to the Selling Well Photography Awards. Ultimately, we as a company become your free agent for a year, and we will work hard to make you famous. Our aim is to make you so famous you never even want to talk to me. You're like, I'm too famous. So that's the object that we're trying to do. But I would absolutely implore you, if you're into filmmaking, you're into photography, you're into art, engage with us, you know, get involved in the programs, and hopefully we can take you to the next level in your career and take you where you absolutely deserve to be. So thank you very much.
Before going questions, we're going to put the SFA video as a question. Perfect. That's okay.
I think before we've got questions, I think there's a video being shown. Okay. I think this is about the Filmmaker Awards.
Le tengo miedo al ser humano, me tengo miedo a mí. Somos la especie que lo destruye todo y podría vivir en total fluidez.
Mi motivación siempre fue el documental. Me gusta mostrar realidades, son proyectos muy pasionales, entonces siempre el documental fue algo que me atrajo. Y en este caso puntual, todo lo que tiene que ver con medio ambiente es algo que a mí me atraviesa ya hace un tiempo largo.
Hola. Por favor, no me toques. Zombie, regresa, por favor. Primera posición, vamos por otra toma.
Filtros cuenta la historia de Santi, que es un zombie que tiene la necesidad como de querer ser un ser humano, ¿no? Entonces se frustra, como que intenta hacerlo con filtros y al final se da cuenta que por estar intentando parecerse a los demás se olvida de lo importante que es él. En muchas ocasiones de nuestra vida todos hemos pasado por eso, como por intentar encajar y querernos parecer a alguien más y nos olvidamos de que lo más maravilloso de la vida es poder ser quienes somos.
La experiencia de realizar The Confirmation fue muy divertida. Teníamos un equipo de personas de todas partes del mundo, de Irán, la India, cubanos, americanos, gente de todas partes, Alemania. La pasamos muy bien, lo que bueno, a mitad del rodaje estábamos filmando en Pennsylvania y hubo una tormenta de nieve muy grande y perdimos 2 días de rodaje, eso tuvimos que meter todo el rodaje de 4 días en 2 días y eso fue un gran reto, pero bueno, se hizo.
Mateo Salas.
Very happy for this news. We want to thank to Sony for this recognition, to Universidad de Antioquia, Festival de Cine de Quito, my wife, my friends, my family. I want to share this with the rest of the nominees too, respect for your work. And I think that these recognitions are a powerful motivation to still fighting to fix a strong vision of the life in the cinema that we love. So we are very grateful with you, and yeah, good night.
No te agüites, comienza porque yo trabajaba en un medio de noticias y estaba viendo esto que estaba sucediendo en esta comunidad llamada Yagualtempa, que es una comunidad indígena. Uno de los retos, pues, digamos que fue llegar quizás a este lugar. Para eso tuvimos ayuda como un productor local, que era como un fixer, de parte de ellos mismos con sus propios oficiales, y ahí de una vez nos encontramos con estos niños que estaban ahí armados.
You are an amazing group of filmmakers.
My inspiration was to see a story that was really beautiful. It's a unique human and nature relationship, but I saw there was a dark side on it. I saw there was a part of the story that not many people were showing off.
And the winner is Pedro Furtado.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sony, for this opportunity. This for me is like a career-changing moment, and I think you guys are setting up a next level of film festivals, so thank you for that. I also want to thank my family for always supporting me in these crazy projects like Filming Dolphins. Also want to have a special thanks to Sony Latin America. They were really nice to us.
Bueno, muchas gracias nuevamente y bueno, abrimos este espacio para aclarar cualquier duda que tengan sobre el concurso, sobre lo que explicó Scott. Si quieren recibir alguna reflexión de él o lo que ustedes consideren, estamos abiertos. Si la quieren hacer en español, yo la traduzco, entonces siéntanse libres, por favor, de preguntar lo que quieran. Much better, ¿no?
Oh, I can see you. Wow, that's amazing.
Okay.
¿En inglés o en español?
En inglés, si quieres, tranquila.
Ok. Tengo varias preguntas del grupo. The first question would be, in film and movies, it is the conjunction of sounds and moving images the factor that builds narratives, environments, and emotions. How are these concepts built in photography without the aid of sound and movement?
That's like literally the most amazing question I've had all week. Look, I think storytelling is in the hands of the artist, right? So you could say the same. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to start. That was the most amazing question I had all week.
Thank you.
I think storytelling is in the hands of the artist. Is it possible to turn the light down a little bit so I can... Perfect, thank you. I think storytelling is very much in the hands of the artist, and you could ask the same question of how is that conveyed in a novel, you know, and it really comes down to you and what you want to portray. I think it's harder. I think it's definitely harder, but that's why it's so important to work hard and get the details and the different perspective. If you think back to Federico's work that I showed about the suicide, the farmers, you know, there's a real depth, there's a beauty, there's a finesse, but I think it is about trying to tell a story in an elegant way. I think when you're talking about deep stories where you're trying to get and convey that kind of work, I do personally feel a narrative is needed to go alongside that series. Some artists prefer not to, and that's entirely up to you whether you want to do that or not. But I think it helps contextualize what you're doing, and it ensures that the viewer is really focused in on what the artist wants them to focus in on too. But it is definitely harder than film. I think film is the easy one. Sorry, film students, but so I think it's easier because, as you say, you have the music is emotion alone, right? And obviously voice is easy. But if you think about the images from Death Row, I personally think they're incredibly powerful. If you wouldn't have known what they were, they're just still life images. But when you know them and you spend time in front of them, I think it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And actually, you don't need anything more than that. You don't need music. You don't need sound. You just need that. But my final point would be where photography needs to be printed, in my opinion. To finish the story, it needs to be printed. You know, if it's sitting on your hard drive or sitting on Instagram, which awful, it needs to be printed to finish the story, to give it the real context of where it should be, basically.
Okay, thank you. So I actually have a set of questions that my group and I've made. So, what are your thoughts on artificial intelligence created images?
I think it's an incredibly interesting time, right? So artificial intelligence has a significant role to play in our lives in the future, and that's going to be in medicine. It's going to be across everything that we do, and it will contribute hopefully positively to humanity, right? In terms of an art context, I think it also has a role to play. From my point of view, when it comes to the awards, for example, or the Filmmaker Awards or the Photography Award, and how I view it is I want to know that the concept and the original image or original film was done by a human. For me, that's really important. I mean, I think you're all human. I mean, you do look like, but so it's really important that that original image is shot by a human, but also the concept itself was done by a human. So you haven't gone into a chat GPT and said, give me an idea, right? It's that original thing. How you manipulate your work is entirely up to you. You know, as I said at the very beginning, I'm just talking about the art context, but how you manipulate that work, entirely up to you. Whether you want to use Photoshop or filters or AI or whatever the next generation of AI is, right? It's entirely up to you how you want to do that. With the caveat that you say what you did. And that, for me, is really key. So it starts with a human hand and a human concept. But how you manipulate, and if you've used AI, nothing wrong with that, but you have to say what you've done. If I'm buying an image for $50,000 or a piece of art for $50,000 and it's AI, I have no issue with that, as long as I know it's AI in the first place. You know? So it's like, you know, when you have, is it chatbots? That's a word, right? A chatbot. You know, when you go into like a company and you ask questions and they give you a chatbot, that's real?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was making that up and that was just jet lag. But so you don't mind talking to a chatbot if you know it's a chatbot, right? But if you're talking to, they pretend it's a human and it's a chatbot, that's where it's different. So I think it's that clarity of what it is. But just in an art context. You know, when it comes to documentary, and if you're doing documentary work, personally, I believe it shouldn't have any manipulation at all. There's a wonderful image. It was taken in the 60s, and it was of some students on a campus, and it was in America, and it's the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And you saw these, maybe like 20 students sitting there listening to someone talking, and the Washington Post took the photograph of this, and there was a fence post behind one of the students, and it looked like it was sticking out of his head, so it looked like a daft photograph, to be fair. So the editor edited out so it looked better, which is fine, right? Would you say that's fine? Yeah, yes. I mean, it seems it. But the problem is, not really, because actually the bigger picture, which was cropped, showed the 20 people listening to the person, but about 1,000 students protesting. Because the fence post represented the fence, and the fence is a border and a divide, and behind the border is something else. So I think when it comes to documenting like history and being factual, there should be no AI and there should be no manipulation at all. But within an art context, yes, as long as it started with a human, basically.
Okay. That being said, is context a fundamental element for a good photograph, or could it be good without it?
I was asked recently in an interview what I think is most important in a piece of art, and my reply was context. I think it's essential in anything. I think it's essential in absolutely anything. You know, it can be visually stunning, like Gabriella's piece in terms of Treasure of the Bible Lands, the one I showed earlier. So you don't need the context to enjoy a piece of art, but I think it's absolutely imperative to a piece of art, basically. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's crucial, 100%. But it's the beauty of art, it's subjective. I mean, Angelo may feel differently, or you know, you may feel differently, or Dr. Rafa may feel differently. I mean, everyone may feel different, but from my point of view, it's absolutely essential in terms of context.
Okay. One last question. Being creativity is something so subjective, how do you judge it on the photography contest?
Luckily, I'm not a judge. Gosh, you've really worked on your questions. I mean, that's amazing. Look, it is subjective, absolutely. And it's actually about how we instruct the judges of what we want to find. And there's a different answer for the filmmaker versus the photography. On the photography side, there's a huge amount of volume, right? There's like 400,000 images to go through. And we go through every single one and read every single word written, right? We absolutely, if you've entrusted us with your work, we have to respect that, and we will read that and look at it. And we filter it down. And it gets to about the last 5,000. And then we fly the judges into London, and we lock them in a room for 4 days. I mean, literally. I think they go blind when they leave. And they look at that work. And that's where the context is really important, because they're going through a lot of work. And if they see the series description written by the artist, they're able to contextualize that quicker. So they're able to give it that context and give that thought. But also, often, what comes out from the series description, the context, is actually where that photographer's from. You know, we want to see Mexican stories done by Mexican photographers. We don't want to see Mexican stories done by an Italian. Nothing wrong with Italians, but so it's that, and that often comes out in that context as well. We want to feel it's a natural sort of story. So, but yes, it's subjective, 100%. Our brief then to the judges is we want to see new. We don't want to. You know, that's the whole point of the Sony World Photography Awards. We're trying to push the boundary of where photography is, but also encourage you to challenge your own creative space. You know, if we just awarded the same thing, like old people smiling for portraiture, you know, it's like, you know, really, really like the same, it would be super dull. So what we're trying to do is encourage you. So what we often see is a lot of photographers look at the previous winners and then try and push on beyond that. And actually we brief the judges to that. And actually we show them the previous winners and we're saying, right, we want to see the next step. You know, how do you push that? But it's totally subjective. You might hate all of our winners. I definitely have my favorites, like the children, right? So, and there's some I don't agree with, and there's others I absolutely agree with, but I respect the judge's opinion. And when we pull those judges together, we always have, we try to, or one from Latin America, one from Asia, one from Europe, one from Americas, to try to get that a different perspective. Because if we just had 5 European judges, for example, it would be quite bland. So we also make sure we have the diversity in terms of gender and geography within that group. Within the film, sorry, this is such a long question. You have to stand up. I'm really sorry. You don't have to stand up.
No, it's okay.
So in the Filmmaker Awards, it's slightly different. I don't know if Angelo said this because I don't speak Spanish, but no, about the money. So basically, it's called the Future Filmmaker Awards, right? It's not called the Best Short Film. What we're looking, it's not about budget. We don't mind if you have 0 money. Right? It's not about I've spent £1 million on an actor and a script and everything else. What we're looking for is your approach to filmmaking. You know, we're looking for the future storytellers. You know where that can be. And so when we brief the judges, that's what that's about. It's about saying, look, we're not looking for a polished film. We're not looking for Hollywood. What we want is the person who is going to be the next James Bond director. You know, who is that next person? You know, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're committed with Sony to find. So the brief to the judge is slightly different, but yet again, it's subjective. But that's the beauty of art, right? We can discuss art all day long. So.
Thank you very much.
Y complementando un poco lo que mencionaba Scott, de hecho, el ganador estudiantil colombiano, Mateo Salas, tranquila, ya te puedes sentar. El ganador de la categoría estudiantil del concurso de cortometrajes estuvo recientemente en una entrevista y el entrevistador, un alfa partner nuestro, le pregunta, oye, ¿pero por qué ganaste? Y genuinamente él no sabía por qué había ganado el concurso. Se reúne con Scott y le dice, Scott, pero dime por qué gané. Y básicamente esa fue la respuesta. Le digo, tú ganaste porque inclusive la temática que él estaba trabajando, que era el desplazamiento en Colombia, que es algo, digamos, es una temática compleja, se ha visto muchas veces, él logró darle una perspectiva diferente, creativa para los jurados, que hizo que absolutamente en los 5 finalistas, lo que nos decía Scott es este. ¿Qué es? Él tiene algo diferente del resto de finalistas. Y ahí es donde vimos esa creatividad, esa perspectiva para abordar una temática que inclusive ya ha sido tratada muchas veces, pero de una manera diferente.
I would add, if you're hoping, and you said you'd got those questions from you and your friends, if you and your friends are hoping to enter, I would stress it's not about the judging. Don't think about the judging, just think about your work. Because actually, if you think about your perspective and the detail and the edit and actually what you're doing, you'll be fine. So I think where people go wrong is they think too much about how it's being judged and try to affect their work. You should be true to the work you want to do, and then what will happen naturally will happen naturally.
Preguntas por allá. Allá al fondo.
Sí. Hi, it's an honor to meet you. Now we have access to all kinds of content. It seems like we have seen it all. So nowadays, how can we keep it original or authentic?
Yes, without question. I don't know how many 100 trillion billion photographs are uploaded on Instagram or, probably just by, Beyonce every day, let alone anyone else. I actually don't have any social media personally, so I'm probably the worst person when it comes to sort of the volume of work out there. But the challenge is exactly as you say. There is so much work, there is so much photography and so much visual imagery. But that's the point about perspective. That's the point about different storytelling. If you came to me and said, I've got this story on X, you'd be like, okay, how can I tell that in a different way? How can I represent that in a different way? And I was trying to say earlier that sometimes it's about an element of that story. I saw there was a Chilean photographer that we met recently, and he showed me his work, and it was all about mining in Chile. And he had photographed the mines themselves and the company behind it and these huge landscapes about the climate. And then he'd also done this work about the impact on the local people living there. And if I'm being honest, because hopefully he's not here, it was quite average, his work. But the portraits were fantastic. So actually, if he would just focus on that element of his work, it would be a lot stronger and actually more unique. But also, because he was Chilean, because he lived near there, he got that access. I couldn't get that access. If I walked into that village, obviously I don't speak Spanish, so that would be a nightmare anyway, but if I walked into that village, I wouldn't be able to get as close and as personal to that story as he could. So it was about using his strengths, using his character, his strength in his work, but his own personality, to do the work that would convey better. And no one else could do that. So he actually was well positioned to do that body of work. We met a lovely man last night who did this really powerful story, and it was a celebration of dead people ultimately. I mean, it was a really difficult subject, and he was in a really difficult area with criminals. I mean, it was a really tough subject.
En Tepito creo que era la Sagrada Muerte, ¿puede ser? Sí. La Santa Muerte.
Yeah, and it was really tough, but it was absolutely amazing, and there's no way I could have done that, but his character, he was such a soft man, and like in a nice way, like really humble. They obviously felt comfortable with him, so he played to his strengths to create the work that he could do, And I haven't seen anything like that before. So I think it's a case of finding the story you want to tell. Yes, the story may have been told a million times, but finding the angle in the story that you want to get that detail for, and then playing to your strengths as an artist to go, what am I good at? You know, and then playing to that. And then naturally, that will be unique in terms of how you do it.
Thank you.
Hi, I hope you're liking Mexico City.
I love it.
So you open up your presentation with this comparison of a couple pictures and their prices. So that's my question, you know, like how do you value art? What do you think about these prices?
I mean, art is valued by ultimately the gallery and the artists themselves, right? So I don't value it. If I buy something, then that's probably going to increase its value from an artist's point of view. And depending on who bought it, that increases it. So if a museum bought, say you did a piece of work and a museum bought it, that will increase its value. Because basically, collectors want to know that the value is going to be held. You know, so it depends, right? If you're buying something for $1,000, it's not about an investment. If you're buying something for $100,000, it's about an investment. So basically, how art is valued is very much about the collections it's in, you know, who owns it, what museums have shown it, what exhibitions it's done, but also the consistency of the artist. You know, I was saying earlier about some young artists, they forget actually, or like what people are buying into, and they're buying into the future, not just the now. Often if I meet an artist and I'm thinking about, you know, buying that, it's like, okay, what are they doing next? And actually, that's actually how I started the awards. I was looking for up-and-coming artists, and I couldn't find a program that celebrated new talent. So I thought, oh, we should launch that. And then we agreed with Sony to do it. And that's pretty much how the award started, because we were actively looking for up-and-coming talent. So the actual value itself is a curve on your career as an artist. But it's a natural thing about who bought you, who represented you. I think the thing to remember from a young artist's perspective is that when you find gallery representation, so you go into the gallery to hopefully be represented, that gallery has to invest in you as an artist. And what they're thinking about is your exhibition now, but also the work you're doing in the future. And then they'll push you out there and hopefully get you sold, and then you go up. If you went into that gallery and said, right, I want to sell my work for $1 million, they're going to ask you, okay, great, when did you last sell for that? And if you haven't ever sold before, then they're going to say, well, you're never going to sell for $1 million, right? So it's also about what you've sold historically to do that. And then the final thing I'd say is, as a young artist, please don't give away your work, ever. So many people I meet, I mean, they're really kind, and they say, oh, here's one of my photographs, and I always say no. Art photography is sold in editions. So if I'm buying something, I want to know how many editions that is, how many prints there are. So the Gabriella piece, there's 8. So I know there's 8 of those in the world. I don't want to know that the artist has given one away to their friend. You know, so it's also really important about having that discipline from the early stage. So when you go into a gallery, you can say, yep, I haven't given away any images. This is my work. You know, I'm an entry price point, so maybe $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, then sold. Then your next exhibition, maybe $5,000, $7,000. Then hopefully you'll build up. You'll go to art fairs like ours. You'll get institutional investment, be represented in a museum, and then you'll start getting into sort of 5 figures, 6 figures, and that's kind of sort of how it works, basically.
Right, thank you. And my group has another question about the how many categories can we in how many categories can we participate in this concourse?
You have to choose between professional or open. I would recommend professional. Professional isn't, you have to be a working professional photographer. It's just judged as a series, a body of work, and that's the main contest. The open competition is just one image. You can submit into any of the 10. We prefer you don't submit the same series into 10. That's not really what we're after. So if you have 10 different bodies of work, you have an architectural body of work, submit into architecture. If you have creative work, submit into creative. So you can submit into as many as you wish, but really think through the edit and really think through the description, because we see work in the wrong categories, and that's like you aren't able to edit your work. And the judges don't say, but that's an amazing body of work, we'll move it. It's like, no, the artist doesn't even know their own work, and it's rejected. So really look at the description across all the 10 categories. And there's it's such a shame, I'm not going to name the artist, because there's the most amazing work I saw last year of portraits, and they were wrestlers, and the artist submitted it into sport because they were wrestlers, and it didn't win or come anywhere near winning. But I think it probably would have won portraiture because it was amazing, amazing portraits. So really look at the descriptions and think about it, as opposed to just don't upload your hard drive, basically.
Right, and what advice could you give us if we I don't know, we have 30 pictures, but we don't know which one to upload, how can we, complete it,
Yeah, it's what I was saying earlier about the edit. It's the most important thing, and I mean, you laugh, but it is, I get it, 100%, right? It's the most important thing. What I would recommend strongly, so on a series, we have up to 10, okay? So let's just say your subject is, I actually can't, I've just lost all topics out of my head. Whatever, give me your subject, give me a subject.
The Mexico City is downtown,
okay, downtown, right. So you want to talk about the history, the current nightlife, the architecture, the cultural identity, the people, activism, shopping, I don't know, right? Have your 10 titles that you want to talk about. There's got to be a theme to what you're doing, right? And put your 10 words that you're trying to show, the whole story, and then get one photo per word, and then you've got your series. Yeah, makes sense? So you've got chapter 1, chapter 2, all the way to chapter 10. If you feel you've got your pictures, fine, but you're missing chapter 5. Don't be lazy. Don't go to your 30 and just dump one in. Go and photograph chapter 5. Yeah? So make sure you've got an image per story you've got. And when you write those words out, you might feel that actually I've only got 7 chapters. And 7 chapters is fine. The point is a series is from 5 to 10, not has to be 10. So write out the chapters and be really, really strict in terms of which image is there. And don't go for, it's my favorite because it's my mum or, whatever, right? It's go for the ones that are actually the most powerful and consistent. Okay, and you might have backups, and it might be that your backup to one of the chapters is better than your favorite because it sits with the other chapters better as a thread, as a body of work, as a consistent palette. So that's the best way to edit it sort of down, thinking about that story. But don't, when I said don't be lazy, I didn't mean that in an aggressive way, right? Don't just go, I'm missing something, I'll use that one. Sometimes it's better to go and shoot that independently.
Right, appreciate you, thank you.
Hello, good morning. Sorry. Paulo just told one of my questions. My next question would be, I'm more of a film person, so, but I want to get into photograph. I'm quite interested. So in film, they have a saying, which is make the movie you want to see. I would like to ask you what's the equivalent in photograph.
So making a movie you want. Sorry, making a movie you want to see.
Make the movie, yeah.
I would say it's telling a story you want to tell. That's the thing. It's being passionate about the story you want to tell. And I think the young lady who asked the very first question about it's hard in photography because there's no audio, there's no sound. But if you're really wanting to tell that story, you'll find the way to do that. But yeah, it's tell the story you want to tell because then it will be strong. If I told you to do that downtown story and it wasn't your thing, you won't succeed. In the greatest respect, as in, you need to be passionate about the story you want to tell.
Thank you. And I got another question. Cynthia asks, it's not the story itself, it's how we tell it. It's like our perspective, our point of view. So, what other advice would you have for us? Not for us to find our voice, that's like an individual process for each person to find like their own voice. But where or through or how the hell would you advise for us to look for inspiration or like clarity on what we want to do? Because I'm more of a writer myself, well, wannabe writer, and I have like 5-6 projects I'm currently working on, but I can't decide myself on which one to pursue like fully. So, like.
Yeah, I mean that's a super question. I think in terms of inspiration, I think it's about immersing yourself in it, right? So. I'm very lucky that I obviously go to a lot of exhibitions all around the world. So over the next, I can't even tell you my diary for the next 5 weeks. It's absolutely crazy. But it's literally in every different continent. And I see a lot of art and I engage in a lot of art and I meet a lot of artists. So I'm saturated with that sort of information. But with that, I'm able to draw references from different things, right? So I've seen bodies of work about downtown, I've seen bodies of work about lots of different things. And so when you're looking for that inspiration, it's also about having that knowledge, right? So filmmakers know film. Every filmmaker I've met, they've seen every movie on the planet, right? And every independent movie and every really raw, grainy. And then they're really surprised that you haven't seen it, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. But it's about immersing yourself. I'm a huge reader. You're saying you want to be a writer. I would have so much respect for that. I mean, I think it's a huge talent. But yet again, it's about if you want to be a poet, immerse yourself in poetry. I think there is, the young lady saying earlier about that there is so much out there already. There really is. You don't have to copy it for sure, but you can be inspired by it. But also, it's not about being inspired by the same theme. It's not about, I'm doing downtown, I'm going to look at downtown imagery. It's no. It's immerse yourself in all types of art. What I see in a painting can influence me in something else. What I read can influence me in something else. Walking around this amazing university is inspiring in itself. I mean, we got a short history lesson earlier, and it's absolutely incredible. I didn't actually want to come in here. I just wanted to keep walking around. It's inspiring, right? I mean, just being in this space. If you can't be inspired by this university, it's like, wow, it's incredible, right? So inspiration comes from every different thing. And this is maybe going to sound wrong, and I don't mean it to sound negative, but one has to be open to that, right? So people say, yeah, I'll go to museums, I'll do whatever, and I'll be inspired. No. You have to really be open and be really receptive to that, and to be able to question, to be able to do it, but genuinely open. And I think that's where the inspiration will come, because one doesn't know when that flash happens, right?
Inclusive me permitiría complementar que muchos de nosotros pensamos que la inspiración o la creatividad es algo que viene de la nada. Sin embargo, la creatividad de inspiración es realmente un proceso de incubación de conocimiento. Entonces, realmente, siempre lo que sugiero, inclusive he hablado con muchos fotógrafos, es seguramente ustedes tienen muchas pasiones. La recomendación es identifiquen esas pasiones, esos gustos, sean específicos en qué les gusta y seguramente ustedes van a conectar los puntos. Y ese proceso de incubación es el que les va a generar ese aha moment de quiero esto, esta es la temática, esto es lo que me apasiona. No necesariamente es quedarse esperando a que llegue esa inspiración divina, por así decirlo. Realmente es un proceso consciente que requiere apertura para adquirir ese conocimiento y es algo que hemos visto muchamente en los fotógrafos. Esos bloqueos creativos realmente son falta de investigación muchas veces, falta de querer ir más allá, falta de querer hacer la profundidad que aplica tanto para fotografía como para video. Realmente la historia de James Bond, cuando la escuché, es impactante y realmente fue un proceso investigativo nada más que hace que automáticamente fuera una historia pues muy linda.
And also, don't be, if you're doing work, especially when it comes to photography, don't be ashamed to say that you're inspired by something. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's like with the AI thing. Don't be ashamed to say I used AI or I used manipulation. You can say I saw Taryn Simon's work and I was inspired to do X. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one last question. Gracias. Hi, thank you. I want to thank you for two things, actually to Sony. First, for not charging for the contest. I really appreciate it because we are floating with that kind of contest and it's not working for anybody. And second of all, I'm actually a Sony Alpha user, and I really thank you for making video more affordable for people that we cannot purchase more professional equipment. So please, just keep doing that. And especially because of the ISO rate. It's just saved my life so many times. And the question that I have for you is how you become a Sony collaborator, a Sony, someone that Sony is giving like the chance to use the equipment beforehand and stuff like that, because I would really like to be one of those people, or actually to know how to become one of those.
Maybe this belongs to me, ¿no?
En español, entonces.
No, creo que el primer paso es el que acabas de dar, es preguntarnos. Realmente muchas veces la gente piensa que es algo súper lejano y es porque no nos preguntan qué estamos buscando nosotros. Lo mismo que acabamos de decir, pero que ustedes sean fieles a ese poder del storytelling. No estamos buscando seguidores que a veces piensan, no, tengo que ser un micro, macro, influencer, como se quieran llamar. Totalmente falso. Estamos buscando ese toque único también en los embajadores, en los colaboradores. Si quieres hacer un review de producto, lo podemos hacer todos, o sea, estamos súper abiertos a hacerlo. Regionalmente trabajamos muy fuerte para que el equipo acá de México tenga todas las herramientas para que cuando gente como tú se acerque podamos apoyarlos. En resumen, acá está el equipo ahora de México, te pones en contacto con ellos y ya está. Estamos, y particularmente me agrada mucho que esa pregunta la haga una mujer. Constantemente a las marcas, a los fabricantes nos cuestionan que no apoyamos el talento femenino. Sin embargo, muchas veces mi respuesta es que el talento femenino tampoco confía en nosotros. Entonces, qué lindo que confíes en nosotros, qué lindo que nos estés dando este voto de confianza y permítanos apoyarte para que no sé a dónde quieres llegar, pero apoyarte en ese camino.
Muchas gracias.
Dale.
Thank you so much.
Vamos.
¿Qué quieres preguntar? Thank you. I don't know who. Gracias.
¿Alguien más?
Ay.
Hi. Okay. Sorry. Well, nowadays I consider that the new generations, even mine, prefer to watch commercial content like TikToks and Reels and stuff in social media. And what do you think that is the challenge to make more presence of cultural and artistical content and also encourage the new generations to be part of this?
Am I right? Are you saying sort of how do you encourage, just to make sure I understand the question, sorry, how do we encourage people, with all the reels and all the things that are out there on social media, how do we get more cultural, artistic content on those platforms? Is that your...
Yeah, to be more to be deep in artist and cultural content.
Yeah, I think we need a different platform. I think that's the... I mean, I say that jokingly, but I literally mean it. I think that, TikTok serves its function, and obviously Instagram serves its function, but it's used for influencers, it's used for a whole multitude of different things. Imagine a platform like Instagram, the power that has with the reels and that information, and imagine that just serving academic, cultural purposes. I mean, it would be amazing, right? I mean, it would be absolutely incredible. So I generally think it's a different platform, and I think that's where cultural organizations get involved, but it's actually about people like yourselves who are young and inspiring. I mean, it's inspiring to us every time we do these things to meet people like you and be like, oh, there's so much energy and there's so much ideas, and it's about trying to help you get that out there. Maybe the reel or the Instagram or this awful sort of requirement for validation by social media isn't actually the right platform. Maybe it's about trying to look at different platforms to do that on.
Y de hecho, yo no sé si ustedes hayan leído en las noticias lo que tú acabas de decir, lo veo de dos perspectivas. La primera va a ser un poco rudo respecto a las generaciones nuevas, y es que cada uno, así tengamos 12, 13 años, tenemos la responsabilidad de automáticamente decidir qué contenido debemos consumir. Esa es mi perspectiva muy personal, y de hecho cuando trabajo con los Alpha Partners siempre les digo eso. Es ustedes definen qué quieren consumir y hacia dónde quieren ir. Y segundo, a lo que les venía a contar es, la gente que creó esta plataforma, inclusive TikTok, es tan consciente del daño que nos están haciendo, que no sé si sea cierto o no, pero leí que en China el algoritmo lo que muestra a los chinos, ¿saben qué es? Contenido educativo. O sea, es un proceso de embrutecimiento en el que acá estamos cayendo, pero nosotros decidimos. Los chinos no nos instalaron la aplicación. Entonces, así como decíamos que anteriormente, la falta de conocimiento hoy por hoy es una decisión activa. La falta de escoger, quiero ver este contenido educativo, quiero ver este contenido artístico, quiero ver, y esa inspiración llegue a mí para que yo posteriormente genere más contenido de esa calidad, creo que recae en todas las generaciones, ¿vale? No necesariamente en la generación Z, millennial o la que sea. Creo que es una responsabilidad nuestra. Y nosotros como fabricantes, lo que te digo, proveemos estas herramientas, estas plataformas para que ustedes decidan, voy por acá o voy por allá.
¿Y crees que nos deberíamos de preocupar por eso? O sea, ¿crees que realmente tendríamos que buscar la forma de que sigan habiendo estos espacios, o tal vez en redes sociales, pero que tenga presencia mayor como contenido cultural o artístico, o contenido que no sea tan comercial, que sea como inmediato? O sea, ¿crees que nos tendríamos que preocupar por buscar que haya ramificaciones de la generación de contenido?
Absolutamente, absolutamente. ¿Ya?
Perdón.
¿Ocupar qué? No, pero sí, absolutamente. Creo que sí, deberíamos profundizar más en eso. Todos, o sea.
Va, gracias.
Dale.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gracias a todos por estar acá. Vamos a estar haciendo algunas actividades, entonces si llegan a tener alguna otra duda, con gusto podremos responder. Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias Scott, gracias Angelo. Que tengan buen día.